Hi, I'm Mara Webster with In Creative Company, and I'm so delighted today to be joined by Fola Evans-Akingbola to talk all about her TV series 10%. And I was actually really interested in, how much you knew of the journey and the arc of where your character was going throughout these 8 episodes. Whether you had all of the scripts at the beginning to really kind of know where that journey was going, and if not, what were the key details and components that were really important for you to kind of know about where that trajectory was going to go character-wise, to be able to start building the groundwork even in episode 1 for her.
No, so I didn't have all the script, the 8 scripts, but I suppose because I knew it was based on the original French one. And in the kind of audition breakdown, they had given us a sense of, okay, Zoe is based on Sophia, and even though it's a different character, she's an actress, receptionist, secretly an actress, desperate to be a working actress. And so I had a sense that was going to be the rough trajectory, that we were going to get to see her kind of not getting to pursue her dreams and then pursuing her dreams and kind of getting caught up in the excitement of that. But I didn't get to see all the first 8 scripts, but I was very, I trusted that it was going to be fantastic because I got to see the first script and even the audition sides, from the scenes that we were sent for the audition. I was in love with the project already, and I was a big fan of the French one. So I think, some projects, I think it's nice to see as much as possible because you're like, okay, before I decide where's this going to go. But because it was John Morton and it was based on Call My Agent, I was sort of just thrilled that they were willing to have me. I was like a yes straight away.
And John Morton not only created it, but also directed the first 2 episodes of the season, I believe. And, obviously, like you said, it's based on the French series, but it's so much its own version, its own characters. It's such a standalone story separate to that in its own right. And within that, that brings the natural journey of how are we going to tell this story? How are we going to explore it? How are we going to shape these characters, and what's the tone and the voice of the show? And was there a huge benefit, especially because John was directing those first 2 episodes, in that part of the process with him, in really just that collaboration between everybody as you kind of figured it out over the first few episodes?
Absolutely. And I think John directing the first episodes was so important because we all trust him so much, and his sensibility and his taste, and the fact that he had written them and his previous work with W&A in 2012 meant that I think we all had a little bit of nervousness coming in about the fact that it is based on the original French one, and the French one is so fantastic. And, I think I'd be lying if I said that we weren't aware that some people are going to obviously make the comparisons and how that's going to be. So there was that nervousness, but I think because John directed those first 2 and we all trusted him so much, it allowed us to really relax into it and just enjoy the rhythm of his writing, and be kind of in the John Morton pocket. But it's interesting because each director really had their own, of course, energy and sensibility. So I don't, maybe because I was on set, I can notice, but I'll be interested if audiences notice that there is quite a different, I think each sort of 2 sets of episodes does have a different kind of vibe to it. And I can sort of sense, okay, this is a new director each time, but it's good that John Morton kind of started us off of okay, he's the captain of the ship, and this is the kind of energy he wanted. It was funny. I think the first few episodes, I realized John's sort of directing style, because quite a few times the note, that's great, just do another one, but just throw it away. And it always made his right. It just taught me that when the writing is so good, you actually don't have to do, obviously you do your prep, but you don't have to then layer too much on, because his writing was so good. We were all noticing okay, the note's more just throw it away, and you just have to let the writing sing, if that makes sense.
No, it really does. And you were talking a little bit before about Zoe at the beginning of the series and kind of how we meet her, where she's working reception at this agency, and it's really very much for her, that's a survival job, but it's also putting her in a space where she has that opportunity to watch everything going around her, and even just the conversations that people have as they're walking by the front desk, even if they're not stopping to bring her into the conversation, she's kind of always there picking up on everything. And what were the observational qualities that you really wanted to bring into her, with that in mind, that everything that she's listening to and hearing and watching is for her about the building blocks of her career, and she's maybe the only person that really knows the extent to which she's paying attention to everything in that way.
Yeah, that's a great observation. I really wanted that to be an important part of her character, because I think, you know, in episode 1 you meet her kind of, you could kind of brush her off as like, the receptionist over there. She's not too much in episode 1, and I think that's quite good and interesting, because the audience is meeting her in the same way that the agents think of her, as just like the receptionist. And then as the story picks up, she kind of continues. But it was really important to me that I tried to get across the idea that she's always hoping she might get discovered, and this sort of sense of like working, oh, okay, something might be happening, can I, you know, and it's not in a conceited way, but she's just so passionate and wanting to be part of this world. And even in like the hair and makeup conversations, that obviously she's not like dolled up, but that there's some people that might do that if they're not wanting to be an actor, that they would maybe do their hair and makeup a bit differently. But I did think that she would always have that slight extra, like, just in case they see me today as who I really am as an actress, I want to look good. You know, she's not the kind of person that would want to risk coming into work not looking kind of presentable. And even all of those kind of details about her being in touching distance to the world that she wants to be a part of, but just not being considered in that way, was sort of, it's like very painful for her, but she's so hopeful, right? And that's always kind of at the forefront. Her hopefulness kind of overtakes the difficulty of it all.
And we also learn that she's not someone who has any sort of parachute. You know, she doesn't have a safety system to catch her if she fails. And even to the point where she's like, my parents are barely talking to me right now. Like, they really don't understand and support what she's doing and trying to pursue a career as an actor and as a creative in the arts. You know, and I thought that was a really interesting detail that tells us so much about her. How extensively did you take details like that about her family life, about her back life, you know, thinking about what's her driver, what's her motivation in a lot of spaces, particularly bearing in mind that like this is something that she's pursuing, you know, single-handedly by herself.
Yeah, it was really important, because I think that showed me that line, that scene that you're referring to in that line, that showed me how much she really wants to be an actress. Because to pursue something that like is going to make your parents not really talk to you, you have to really want it, and really want it for the right reasons. She's not, and this is not a judgment on people who do want this, I'm just speaking specifically for Zoe, like she's not the kind of person who's like, oh, maybe it could be fun to be like famous, or like, you know, I don't know, whatever people might think of sort of that kind of quick fame stuff that's happening nowadays. She loves theatre and she loves Shakespeare, and she wants to like one day win an Olivier Award. Like, she loves it for the craft. And I think you have to, if you're willing to affect your family relationships for what you're doing, because I think when the going gets tough, if you're not in it for the right reasons, you'll probably give up, right? So that was really important to me, that it showed a lot about who she was, that she would, despite her parents' sort of disapproval, she's willing to keep going. But that, for me, that was actually something that I couldn't easily relate to with Zoe, because my parents are very supportive, and like my dad's a musician and composer, my uncle's an actor, so the entertainment industry hasn't been something that was like off limits for me as work. So that, because my parents are very supportive, that I had to do a lot of work on think, oh, what would it be like to have parents that were willing to not even speak to you because of what you're doing. But I kind of, you know, I imagine that perhaps her dad was the kind of person that wasn't willing to pursue his creative dreams, you know, that secretly had his own creative desires, and that's why her pursuing her creative dreams obviously triggered something in her dad. And you know, you don't get to meet her dad in season 1, maybe season 2, that could be cool. But that was all part of the work I did. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that detail. And also, you know, what you were saying there about for her, it really being about the craft and like that's the connectivity that pulls her into it, also kind of feeds into that exploration that we get to see on screen of who is she as a performer. And we get to see it, you know, when Dan comes to see the show that she's in, we get to have kind of like those couple of scenes where you're playing out just a moment of what that show might be, or, you know, who is she when she is suddenly like in character in the middle of an audition room as well. You know, and how did you play around with the idea of a perform, you know, because I love that idea of like a performance within a performance,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, because you're in essence playing a character and then determining, well, who are they as a performer, taking it that other step from there. And so how did you play around with like, what is her voice, what is her style, what is her approach, and who is she when she's performing?
Yeah, that's such a great question. It was the most challenging one was the audition where she's bad in the audition and she's a really bad improviser. And it's like getting that line between she's meant to be a good actress, but then she does a really bad audition and she's really bad at improvising, and getting that line of where that kind of sits. And I think what helped is because she's so new and fresh to, obviously she's trained and she does her kind of theatre, but she's new to kind of professional acting life. That kind of helped me, because I think when you're new to auditioning and that kind of thing, there's a sort of gung-ho, you kind of just like throw yourself into it and hope for the best energy that you can then tweak as you get more experience. You kind of gain a bit more experience of, okay, how to approach the audition room. But for me with Zoe, I always felt like her excitement would kind of sometimes override things, like sort of bubble up and spill over into the character, like she's meant to be playing in an audition. But it was that was one of the most fun things actually to get to do, is be even so we had the kind of 60s stuff that she does on set, and then the policewoman sort of leather jacket wearing audition, and then the kind of World War II stuff. It was really fun to get to do all of those things, and I mean that's what we as actors love to do. So it was very meta, because it's like I was enjoying it just for myself to do all of that, and then I knew of course Zoe would be enjoying all of that.
I mean, you were mentioning there as well, the moment where she's kind of thrown off point a little bit by the improv. And did you kind of also see her as a character that like tries to really create order and tries to like know all the details, you know, it's like a meticulous planner. Like, I like to know all the details of what I'm walking into. I've meticulously prepared my sides for this audition. And so it's kind of natural for her that something like that, like suddenly having that thrown at her, like we're improving, you didn't know we're improving, and now you've got to come up with it on the spot, would be something that would throw her off balance.
Yeah, definitely. Because in the next scene after that audition, when she's sort of angry at Dan and saying like, you can't just spring this on someone, and I think that also shows her kind of how new she is as well to the auditioning process, but that she's someone that if she's going to get an opportunity, she's going to make sure that she's as prepared as she can possibly be, and she probably knows her lines back to front, front to back, running backwards, washing up, like super meticulous, as you say, and is maybe almost a little bit of an over preparer, because actually in that scene where she's getting angry at Dan, me as myself, there were moments where I felt like, you know, she was slightly in the wrong. That what's hard for us as actors is you have, of course, ideally you want to be warned if there's improv in an audition, but you also have to be ready for anything. And it's that balance of that's sort of what I'm talking about with, as you get more experience with auditions, you learn this kind of thing that you have to be really prepared and also let go of that prep and be willing to be flexible. And if they say, should we do a bit of improv, you go, yeah, sure, and throw yourself into it. So I think a lot of her journey is actually looking at her idea of what it's going to be like versus what it's really like, which I think we see when she sort of gets to go to the party and the premiere, and you know, her idea of that, and then in reality Marcus kind of leaves her, the director kind of leaves her, and the party's a bit lonely for her. And you know, I think that playing that was really interesting, is her kind of hopes and dreams for what her journey will be like versus the reality.
I also like that, as you were saying before, we do get to see her becoming a little bit more comfortable and a little bit adept with those parts of the process that she just doesn't have as much experience in at the beginning. And how did you kind of find those nuanced details where you were like, okay, here's where she was in the first time we saw her walking into the audition room, and here's where she's starting to feel a little bit more comfortable and like a little bit more confident in herself?
Yeah, because I think the second audition was episode maybe 5, and the first one was 3. So yeah, it was important to me to somewhat try to show that, okay, each time she's trying to learn from the past experience, and I imagine that she'd be in the bathroom for that second time, kind of gearing herself up, making sure she's like, okay, just stay focused and don't mess this up, because she's just sort of so desperate to make a good impression, of course, as we all are as actors. It's like it's easy to, the intellectual thing that we all know is that, an audition is it's just think of it as a rehearsal, and just, go in and have fun, and they can take it or leave it. Don't try to please them, just do what feels good. Like, that all makes sense intellectually, but it's really hard as an actor to actually feel that. In reality, you go in and you feel like me, please. And so I think I really wanted to, I think hopefully if we do a season 2, we'll see more of this, because I think she's still in that like me phase, actually. But maybe in season 2, as she gets more experienced, maybe feeling a bit more free to just, okay, look, this is who I am as a performer, this is who I am as a creative, and kind of take it or leave it.
I also like that we get to see that exploration of kind of her journey with her self-confidence as a person as well through all of this, and it's like, she knows that she's talented from the beginning, but there's there's always a difference for her in terms of like, once other people start to see it, what that opens up as well, where it's like, okay, like I know that I was right about this and I am on the right path. And so what did you want her relationship with self-confidence to be as that kind of grows for her a little bit throughout the season as well?
Yeah, that's was probably the most important aspect of her for me, was her self-confidence, but that how you have to kind of be a little bit delusional to think that you can make it as an actor. Like, we all have to have a little bit of delusion, I think, not just as an actor in the entertainment industry. So even if, I guess, you wanted to be a musician or a pop star or something like that, your ambition and self-confidence has to be almost a little bit like, a little bit delusional. And yet at the same time, you have to ground yourself in the reality that 89% of actors never work or are unemployed at any given time, or whatever the percentage is. And so for me, it was really fun and most important for me to capture those two things in her, that she's very confident about her abilities, but of course there's only so long you can be confident about something when the outside world isn't giving you that same feedback, so it was important that she hit those moments of doubt, those moments of, oh, okay, I feel like I know that I'm not me. Sorry, Zoe feels like she knows that she's confident, that she's talented, but there's going to be moments where she doesn't get that same feedback, and so it makes her question it. And I think her confidence was really lovely, though, to play, because compared to Simon Gould, played by Tim McInnery, who's one of my favorite storylines and characters, I think they've got a really interesting relationship. They only have one scene together in the show, but they're both the actors trying to still kind of make it. But she's very young and full of passion and full of confidence, and he's sort of crippled by his self-doubt. And so it was really nice to play her end of things, someone who's very self-confident and has moments of doubt rather than is crippled by her self-doubt. But that what you point out, I think, is one of the most fun things to capture, because I think as actors, I mean, I don't know, maybe some actors are just totally confident, probably just Meryl Streep, I don't know. But for me certainly, I think I definitely have moments where I'm like, what am I doing? That is rubbish. I'm just terrible. I should stop. And then of course I have moments where I go, oh, maybe it's possible, maybe I can maybe I can do this. And that just is all inside and kind of creating turmoil. So that was kind of the easy part. You know how I said like the parent thing was hard to kind of relate to, and then I had to work on that aspect of Zoe was easy to relate to. I'm not as confident as her in my talent. I have much more self-doubt, but I could really relate to the kind of inner turmoil of the like ambition and then the doubt and the kind of imposter syndrome.
And, you know, one of the other spaces that brings up a different type of inner turmoil is the fact that she has this relationship with Dan where, you know, they've been friends, they've gotten to know each other for a while, then he becomes her agent, and then they become romantically involved. And, you know, things like her not wanting him to come to the film party because she wants to kind of be there in her own right and doesn't want to be there as someone's plus one, you know, and all the back and forth that comes with that. How did you want to really explore that inner turmoil of, I'm finally getting everything I wanted, and I don't want people to think that it's because my agent is also my boyfriend?
Yeah, me and Prasanna had a lot of conversations about that dynamic and who was kind of in the right, so to speak. But I think she was always coming from the position of what you just said, of it took her so long to be seen for who she feels she truly is, which is an actor and a creative and not just the receptionist. It took her so long to get to that point and be signed by the agency that then she's really fighting hard to cling on to that independence and people seeing her for who she is. So she didn't want to be tainted by that perhaps judgment that might come from other people, that she's then kind of in a dynamic or relationship with Dan. And so for me, I could really understand where she was coming from, and that's what I really focused on, is that she's fought to be seen for who she truly is, and so that's what she's trying to cling on to, perhaps a bit too tightly. And you know, she apologizes to him in the text so she can kind of see that, oh, maybe I've done something wrong. But I could empathize with that desire to stand on one's own 2 feet as a new actress, and particularly because she's a young woman, right? Like that wouldn't be the same conversation. I don't think it would be the same conversation if Zoe was like a guy who was like coming up, or maybe it would. I don't know, if they turned up with their female director, maybe it would be the same conversation. I don't know.
I mean, to that point as well, it also feels like an important choice that there's no gray area for the audience in watching it about, oh, does she have motivations in entering this relationship? It's very clear that this is about a connection between the two of them when kind of shifts to that romantic space. And I was interested in how you and Prasanna really worked together, particularly on that scene where they first kind of start realizing that they feel the same way, about making sure that was the choice that was coming across.
Yeah, I'm glad that it came across that way for you, because that would have been a very different storyline and dynamic to play. I think what really helped us is in the writing, there weren't too many, like there weren't sort of seeds of it before, like in previous episodes, it wasn't like there were scenes of sort of Dan flirting or checking out Zoe or anything like that. So they were very protected. I think our characters were very protected in the writing, and it was really that in that episode, in that moment, she's, as we spoke about with her parents, she's had her whole life with her parents not having her back, and really her being the only person to believe in herself and to have her own back. So then to overhear Dan believing in her and fighting for her and standing up for her to the other actors, Emma and Himesh, that's what kind of ignited that, like, oh wow, you know, to hear him talking about her that way is what sort of sparked it all. So I think the writing really protected us because it was that situation that kind of did the spark, rather than weird sort of office dynamics before that. And I think it takes them both by surprise, which is what's fun. It's sort of like, oh, I've not seen you in this way before, but let's go with it. And the fact that it took us both by surprise is what we tried to focus on, is that we tried to focus on capturing that dynamic of, rather than it being we'd been fancying each other for years in the office, it being a new discovery for both of us. And that we were both, what we actually did, we worked with a great intimacy coordinator, and in the kind of dynamic, once we start kind of being intimate, we really worked on also making sure Zoe was passionate and proactive in her sort of pursuit of him, and even in just the kissing of, you know, that she's just as up for it as he is. And I think that protected from Dan being made to seem like he was predatory or anything like that.
And, you know, in the fact that you've now kind of done this whole season and developed this relationship with Zoe as a character, what are kind of the main skills and tools that you feel that you had the opportunity to develop through playing her on this project, that you're really excited to be able to like carry into a potential season 2 with her as well?
That's such a great question. I think one of them has to be what we spoke about at the beginning, is the trusting of the writing. And I think if we do get a season 2, fingers crossed, I will really take that into season 2, of that, because the writing is so good. I can trust that John and the lovely writing room will write everything that's needed for Zoe. And of course, I will bring my own thing to it. But trusting that process is one of the main things that I think I'll definitely that I definitely learned. And I think I'm trying to think, what else did I really learn from playing her? Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's the main thing of trusting it all. Because then when I don't like to watch lots and lots, but I watched the whole, like, so I don't like to watch it again and again, because that's a bit cringe to watch myself too much. But of course I really watched the whole show because I want to see everyone else's work too and celebrate in that. And so getting to watch it, I think that's what I've been able to see, is the scenes that I was sort of worried about, or how did it come across, it's fine, because we've been in good hands with the creative team behind the scenes.
Yeah, no, I think that's really amazing to hear. And the writing definitely is one of the biggest strengths of the show. And it's been so great watching you through season 1, also crossing my fingers for another season of the series. Thank you so much, Fola.
Thank you so much.